Do you struggle with imposter syndrome? In this episode, I'm going to break down the one key mistake that I made regarding imposter syndrome and the 3 core shifts that you can make to overcome imposter syndrome so that you can thrive in your business and in your life. Having worked with many high achievers, high performers, and interviewed amazing people on the podcast, I've noticed the most high achievers identify their self-worth based on how well they're doing externally, based on their performance, based on the external results that they're getting. As a consequence, this means that their self-esteem, self-worth fluctuates based on the results that they are achieving. If they're doing great, if the business is thriving, if everything is fantastic, they will feel great about themselves. And the second things start to pivot, things start to be a bit more of a struggle, they will have more self-doubt. This is a pattern I've seen with all the high achievers that I've worked with, and this really holds back our performance further because in the harder moments, in the moments where the business is struggling, we need more self-belief in order to push forward, to gain momentum and to take more action. But often in those phases, we have this downward spiral, which means that we actually achieve less, and then we have less self-belief and less self-worth and more imposter syndrome. Because imposter syndrome happens both in phases where you're struggling and things aren't going well and you think, well, maybe you're a fraud or fake because you're not getting the results. But it also happens when you're doing really well and really successful and then you think maybe you're not worth it. And then what sometimes happens is you self-sabotage the whole thing and break it down and you're back at square one and you struggle again because deep down you believe that you're a fraud or you're fake. Imposter syndrome is something that I've seen with pretty much everyone that I've worked with. Also, all the amazing people that I've interviewed, they all have some version of self-doubt, imposter syndrome, where they don't fully believe that they are worth the success or they don't fully believe that they're the right person. Everyone seems to have imposter syndrome. I remember when I looked it up at the time that I saw that even Einstein had imposter syndrome. Apparently he compared himself to Newton, and many Hollywood actors say that they have it. And I even had someone on the podcast say that everyone has imposter syndrome unless they are narcissists. So that was his perspective. It is very common. I think one of the things that I struggled with when I didn't realize quite how common it was, and I had very strong imposter syndrome, was that I believed everyone else around me was a huge success and running the show and doing fantastic, and I was there in my little corner faking it and not really being who people thought I was, or whatever imposter syndrome narrative that I had. And it was only when I started to open up about it and ask people around and interview people on the podcast or work with different people on this topic that I saw the HR leaders with 20, 30 years experience managing teams of thousands had imposter syndrome, or people that had an audience of, several millions struggle with imposter syndrome, or famous New York Times best-selling authors struggle with imposter syndrome. And then I thought, okay, right, it's not me. And that helped to calm the narrative and to realize that maybe from an anthropological background or biologically, or maybe just from society, this is clear, deeply wired in all of us. So that's the good news. We're all struggling. We're all in it at the same time. No matter where you're at in your journey, whether you're starting off, struggling, hit a low point, or doing extremely well, you probably have some variance of this. Now, here's the one mistake I made when it comes to managing imposter syndrome. Because I was so tied into this high achiever mindset, I was convinced that if I had more skills, more accolades, more results, more coaching hours, more awards, at one point my brain would be like, okay, I'm no longer a fraud, I'm no longer a fake. Clearly I've achieved all of these coaching degrees, certificates, spoken in these places, done X amount, hundreds of episodes. Now I'm legit, right? And so what I started doing, and I actually still do because it still helps me, and if you've been listening to my show for a while, you will have heard me talk about this, is I started marking all of the key results I was obtaining. I call these sugar cubes or tracking the wins. I have this WhatsApp channel with myself called KT Wins. I write down every great result, a fantastic coaching session, some great feedback, a testimonial, people complimenting me after speaking gig, a new award, a book that was published, all of these things, so that I had a log of all the things I had achieved, so that when my brain freaked out and said, you're fake, you're not legit, everything you do is rubbish, I'd be like, look, I have proof. Now, this helps to build confidence. This is why I talk about it in lots of different episodes, because it does help to show that you're putting in the actions, that you're taking action, that you're gaining momentum. It does have some sort of proof effect on the brain, and it can calm you down. But I realized this was a huge mistake when it came to overcoming imposter syndrome, because you're speaking the same language that it has. You're speaking in terms of you're worth something based on results. So in a phase where you get less results, what happens if you're sick and you can't work for 6 months? You're not getting many results then, right? And so then your brain, if it functions with results equal I'm worthy, lack of results equal I'm not worthy, equal increased imposter syndrome, in low moments where you're not getting results, it won't work to just be like, hey, 2 years ago I did really well, or even 6 months ago. So it helps on the moment from time to time. If you have a slow dip in confidence, it can still be a useful tool. But to overcome imposter syndrome in general, where the entire narrative is you're not legit, or you're fake, or you're not worthy, and all these sort of thoughts, it doesn't really fully work. And it was only as I was walking to my co-working space and I was listening to The Art of Accomplishment. If you haven't checked out that podcast, fantastic podcast. Also with Joe Hudson, is one of the main speakers in that podcast. He has a co-host also, and the two of them discuss different topics, and really, really fantastic content. And they had an episode on imposter syndrome. Now, I thought I'd got this. I was like, I've got this. I have my Katie Wins channel. I know that I need to be supportive, a bit more self-compassion, And as I listened to it, I realized I was totally wrong when it came to this. And that's when I thought I'm going to record an episode saying that I got it totally wrong when it comes to imposter syndrome, because I did. Because the truth is, what actually makes the difference are these 3 shifts. The first one is admit it. Don't hide behind a bunch of accolades and wins and successes. Admit, I struggle with imposter syndrome. I sometimes feel like a fraud. I struggle with self-doubt from time to time. Because also it makes you more human and more relatable, because everyone else struggles with it. And when you say it, you can see the relief in people's faces of, oh yeah, me too, kind of deep down. But I'm not telling anyone, because then I don't come across as confident. So that everyone is sort of keeping up this persona of they got everything together. So the second you break this glass wall between you, you can connect deeper. So the first shift was admit that you have imposter syndrome. And the second one is deeply related, is be vulnerable. Because what removes imposter syndrome is when you're no longer pretending. It's when you're no longer trying to put up a smile on your face all the time, saying that you're fantastic at everything, because that makes you totally unrelatable. People don't relate to someone who's all shiny and glossy and perfect. People relate to imperfections. People relate to struggles. People relate to self-doubt. Of course, don't exaggerate it. Don't pretend you have self-doubt about everything all the time. That's not real either. But don't hide the self-doubt. Don't hide the imperfections and the struggle. Be vulnerable. Share the highs, share the lows, share the doubts. And this is so important when it comes to leaders, because leaders in organizations, I've coached several CEOs, many different CEOs and leaders in different types of organizations. Very often they want to put up this appearance of they've got everything sussed. They've got the whole plan, the vision, the direction, the strategy. But what happens is, because they're not vulnerable and they're not sharing some of the areas where they have doubts, again, you don't have to be transparent about everything all the time, but maybe some certain doubts that you have, other people don't directly relate to them, other people don't dare to open up as much, and therefore it creates a bit of a barrier between the leader and the team. And what you want is for the team to open up. What you want is for the team to be vulnerable and share some of their concerns, some of their thoughts, some of their ideas. So if you express certain doubts, you're vulnerable about certain things that are a bit of a challenge, again, all within balance, then people will relate better to you and will be more open to you. So that's the second shift, being willing to be vulnerable a bit more, to let go a bit of this persona and appearance. And the last shift is living life with an open heart. Because the truth is, imposter syndrome is very focused on me, myself. I'm struggling, this is hard for me, I have self-doubt, and there's a very me narrative and a sort of almost self-obsessive lens where you're looking at yourself and you're thinking, am I good enough? Can I do this? Am I fake? Am I worthy of this? But when you walk around with an open heart and you place your focus on other people, it goes away. It literally goes away. during a coaching session, I never have imposter syndrome because I'm focused on what the coachee is saying. I'm focused on what they're saying, where they're progressing, where they're struggling, what their plans are, some of the patterns that I'm seeing. My mind doesn't have space to think, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Am I fake? Am I really a good coach? There's no space for all of this. And it's exactly the same. If you do keynote speaking, you know what I'm talking about. When you go on stage and you put all your focus on the message that you're delivering and the audience, the whole self-consciousness and doubting yourself and all this anxiety around your own performance totally disappears. Now imagine if you could do that most of the time. If most of the time you were in a place where open heart, focus on others and not yourself. Is this message resonating with people? How can I support people better? How can I contribute to them? When I look at people like Tony Robbins, he lives that way. He's all about contribution and other people, and he's not thinking me, am I good enough all the time? Probably that happens sometimes because, like I said, he's human and kind of all the humans have this, but he's probably not spending most of his thoughts and ideas focusing on himself. That's why I realized that I was so wrong when it came to imposter syndrome, because the whole tracking your wins was still me. Look, that went well, that went okay. Trying to change my internal narrative by showing proofs of results that still focus on yourself, even if a lot of the results implied and implicated other people. But if you just put all of your attention a lot of the time on other people, on contributing, on connecting more deeply with others, on being vulnerable, on letting down that barrier, that's when your imposter syndrome takes a backseat. And when I listened to that Art of Accomplishment podcast episode, one of the things they said really stuck with me. They said that keeping up a persona, keeping up that perfection, which we often do as a defense mechanism. I know that I've done that. I've always wanted everything to look perfect, to look all polished, to come across as competent and clear and calm and confident and all of these things. So you're sort of keeping up a certain persona, which is also a professional persona, which is fine. But if you overdo it, you're not being vulnerable. You're not connecting deeply with others. You're not showing the struggles. I was there with my perfect streaks of a gazillion days of meditation, a gazillion days of 10,000 steps a day, all of these things, because I also wanted to keep a persona for myself. Because often we want to keep up this persona to counterbalance the imposter syndrome voice within us. Let me have this perfect, polished version of myself as much as possible. Then I can prove to the world that I'm this perfect, polished version that absolutely nobody is and is totally unrelatable. And also prove to myself that I'm not this imposter. But if you let go of that pressure and you show up, I'm still doing my 10,000 steps. You still show up, you still do the actions, but without that pressure, without that desperate need to look or feel a certain way, you can relax a bit more. And so what they said in this episode is that keeping up this persona led to more decrease in performance than actual incompetence. Let me repeat this. So keeping up a persona leads to a greater decrease in performance than incompetence. So what this actually means is it's worse for your business, for your career, for your work, to keep up a perfect image, all polished, and not be vulnerable and not connect with others. That's actually worse than if you're not competent in a certain area. And the reason for that is that if you're incompetent but open-hearted, vulnerable, and willing to learn and still taking action and working, that over 6 months or a year or 2 years will make you a way better performer. You'll feel more connected with the people you work with. You'll have a greater feeling of belonging in your group, with your teammates, whoever it is, your leadership group. And this will make you more fulfilled and it will make your performance increase. On the other hand, if you're always striving to keep up a persona or an appearance, then you're more likely to burn out, to feel unfulfilled, feel totally disconnected and lonely because you're not sharing any of your struggles because you don't want to look low or incompetent or unconfident. And this makes you also unrelatable, disconnected, and performance is never achieved alone. It's a team sport, whether it's with a team that you've hired, whether it's with the clients, whether it's with the colleagues you're working with. We all work and synergize together for a great performance. So if you're just in there fighting the camp on your own, trying to get all the results alone and keeping up this persona, you'll crack because it's a team sport. So the more connected you are as a team, the more vulnerable, open you are, the greater the performance, both individually, actually your individual performance, but also business as a whole and team as a whole. So that's why I was totally wrong when it came to imposter syndrome. Still great to track your wins, can still help with confidence. I will still mention it as a tool. It's still a useful tool, and in little lows of confidence, it can still help. But as an overall shift, what really makes a difference, admit you struggle with it. We all do. We all have self-doubt. We all struggle with some variant of imposter syndrome, and that's fine. What matters is what you do about it, because then you admit it, you're vulnerable, and you share with people your ups, your downs, your struggles. It makes you more relatable. It's more real. It's less pressure on yourself to keep up this persona. And then also always remember to have an open heart, to focus on others and not put all the focus on yourself, to contribute and to put all your attention and intention towards creating an impact and towards other people, and then it diminishes that internal voice. The most important thing is to not let it hold you back. Imposter syndrome is just a narrative based on probably a mix of biology and society. And that's because we always have more progress to do. There are always people out there who've achieved more. There's always people out there who've achieved less. It doesn't matter, right? To each their own journey. You just do the best you can. You show up the best you can each day. New reps, new progress, always focusing on improving, experiments, trying new things, following your curiosity and your joy, and not letting that imposter syndrome stifle and block you from taking action, from believing in yourself, from contributing to the world, right? We'll struggle with it, and we make and push through it anyway, right? That's the aim. If you're new to the show, my name is Katie Stoddart. I work as a high-performance coach for entrepreneurs and founders, mostly who struggle with ADHD. If you're interested in booking a coaching session, I work with a selected group of entrepreneurs and founders to help them in their business and also how it correlates with their personal life so that they can thrive in both their business and their life. So if you're interested, please fill in the form below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. I would love to hear what has helped you to overcome imposter syndrome and what questions you have on this topic. Answer every single comment myself. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and see you in the next episode.